Chrissa Maxwell here of the Sports Philanthropy Network with none other than Randy Grimes. He's a friend of the show. He's been here on Super Bowl Radio Row with us.
16th year.
Wow.
Yeah.
You got me beat. And of course, he is a 10-year veteran of the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but now you kind of have a bigger role to play that impacts far more people.
Definitely more important.
Yes,
right.
Impacts more people than are sitting in, Raymond James Stadium. So you've been so open and vocal about your battle with addiction and recovery. How important is it for you to be here in this media center year after year, sharing your story and advocating to let athletes and other people in the industry know that they're not alone in their struggle and that help does
and that
exist.
there is hope and help out there. And I learned early on in my recovery that in order to keep what I have, I've got to give it away. So that's why I come out every year. I know there's a lot of guys out there that were just like me who are suffering in silence and won't raise their hand and ask for help because they usually don't think there's somebody else out there that struggled with what they're struggling with. And, we've done a great job, I think, over the last 16 years of advocating for former players. And not just football players, but baseball, and pretty much every organization or every sport out there that has an organization that supports their former players. That's who we work with. And so it's an honor. It's what keeps me sober, is to go out and talk about it and help people. And, I'm honored to be teamed up with Heather Stokes and Serenity Light Recovery and Wellness down in Houston, because that's where, we have a great relationship with the Player Care Foundation and so many other different organizations, but, they do such a great job of working with the players. And it's so much more than just teaching somebody how to stay sober. It's, really getting in there and digging down and finding out why they do what they do. And, for me, it was transition. I didn't transition well out of football. Mm-hmm. And, that's what a lot of people struggle with.
And for Heather, for you, like Randy said, there is this stigma where a lot of athletes feel like they have to be as mentally tough as they are physically tough. So how refreshing was it for you to see someone like Randy come out and speak on behalf and join your mission?
It's inspiring, I, too, am a person in long-term recovery, and I would find so many barriers for friends and family to even seek treatment, and that's why I created Serenity Light Recovery. And so when I met Randy several years ago and him up there being so bold and brave and sharing his story, it's like, yes, right? It's so empowering and uplifting, and there was this shift. I could see the recovery shift movement, right? And right now it's looking at treatment in a different way, right? It's Serenity Light Recovery Wellness Center, right? It's more inviting, it's more welcoming, and it removes that guilt and shame as well. Nobody wants to go to rehab, but let's go to a wellness center that's really going to help you get well from the inside out. And like Randy said, let's get down to the root cause and work through it and improve quality of life and let that individual find and reach their greatest self on and off the field.
And what's kind of ironic is that pain management is obviously a very hot topic in the NFL and most contact sports. But the stigma is that for us civilians, us unathletic people over here, if I go around saying that I am constantly getting tramadol shots and taking all of these painkillers, people would judge me, so to say, right? But for football players, it's kind of expected. We hear it being reported, and it just becomes a regular way of treating yourself and self-medicating, which of course then creates this domino effect. So the game has come such a long way since you've played as far as pain management goes, but when you're watching the game now, do you watch it differently than you did when you were a fan and even when you were playing, to see what these athletes are doing now, putting in their body, and almost have that moment of like, no, don't do it?
Well, and the game's changed so much since I played. Back when I played, we used to have 3-a-days, and we would beat the hell out of each other. Most of the injuries we got when I played in the NFL were from my own teammates. And now practices are so much more guarded and protected. They can only put pads on so many days out of a year. It's just a different game, and guys are having longer careers. They're having fewer injuries now as a result of the collective bargaining agreement. But I never blame the Bucs for my addiction, but they did make it available. But that was a different era back then. And I took advantage of that. I just never thought that I was going to take that addiction into my private life, into my retired life. And that's when things really spiraled out of control. So the game's just changed so much, and I like to think that our advocacy over the last 16 years hasn't helped that.
So when you do look back at your career, what is something, knowing everything you know now, all of the great work you've done, what is the first thing you would tell your younger, active NFL player self that would hopefully derail you from going down the path you did, even though it has helped so many people and it was almost for a reason, right?
It was almost meant to be,
yes.
Right. Well, I would tell myself, you're not going to do everything that you have to do to stay out on the field. Don't do it. Don't let your identity be defined by the pads or the uniform. I was more than just a football player, but I didn't realize it at the time. Football was who I was, and it was my life. Those are the things I would tell myself, and stay away from the opiates. Because the opiates were the. I always say that opiates stole everything from me, but benzos, Xanax, things like that's what nearly killed me.
And now working with Randy, and I'm sure you have a very diverse clientele that comes in and they're looking for that health and that guidance. I know the answer in that athletes, they are tough. They feel like they have to be tough, but have you seen anything that's been a successful approach in working with athletes, people who are coming from these professions where they're expected to have this certain mental stability, that you've been able to break through with them and really help them with their path to recovery?
Absolutely. So several of them come in very angry, right? And they're grieving and they don't understand why, or they don't even want to admit it, right? Or I don't have a problem. It's like, we're not going to talk about the problem, right? Let's see what happened in life, right? Talk about that. Talk about how did it feel to walk off that field. And we don't have to admit that we have a problem right now, but we help them see it. We remove those earmuffs, we remove those blinders, and show them a new way, right? And a lot of them suffer from, there's anxiety and depression, and it's helping them navigate through that without the guilt and shame, and allowing them to experience the wellness, holistic modalities that I think every player, every team needs to incorporate, right? Because then opiates, we wouldn't need them. There's other ways to treat pain, and there's other ways to heal, and that's our big message, right? It's like, you don't have to go down that slippery slope, but it's meeting the individual where they're at, looking them in the eye, seeing them as a human being, and saying, it's okay, we've been there. Especially when Randy comes out to the facility and saying, hey man, yeah, I was right there, right? And it's not admitting failure. You didn't fail, right? Like, we are getting well, and let's look at the next chapter and what that looks like.
There's such important conversations, and as we said, the game has changed. We've seen so much progress. Concussions are down to a historic low, 17% down from 2023 season. So there are good things happening, and health is being prioritized, but knowing what you know, going through the system, going through these wellness journeys, what is one practice that you would like to see the NFL implement to help these athletes with their pain management, with their mental health, and move forward after the game to live these healthy, productive lives, not relying on these vices?
Well, and the first thing I'd love to see them do is help the athlete transition out of the game, better than they do. They've done a great job, and they are better than when I came through. But there's more that they can do, and prepare these guys to not have the game anymore. Have off-season wellness programs to where you're preparing them for whatever their next occupation is. They've got to rediscover themselves and reinvent themselves, and what are they interested in? But start preparing them for that. And I think that's the biggest part right there, and have opportunities to come in and hear people's stories, and the guys that have gone before them, and have already retired. Listen to those stories and see what you can take away from those and benefit from.
How can people get involved in both of your missions in helping take away the stigma of recovery and know that there are better ways to get healthy in your mind and in your body and overcome this pain. What is the takeaway and how can people get involved?
Well, you can find me on social media. I always say if you can't find me on social media, you're not trying very hard. But I've got, you can find me at my website, which is proathletesinrecovery.org. I wrote a book, called
I
Off Center.
heard, yeah.
Off Center. You can go to offcenterthebook.com and find the book there, or just go to Amazon. And then Heather's got some awesome opportunities there with peer counseling and things like that. There is help and hope out there, but you got to raise your hand and ask for it.
Yes, so I'm also on social media. I think everyone is. But our website is serenitylightrecovery.com. It has a lot of great resources on there, as well as explanations of our services and the science behind it, which I love. I'm a why girl. I want to let you know why it helps, right? You can call us directly and talk to the team, and we can help navigate your journey with us or your family, right? We have a wonderful family program, and Randy mentioned our peer services. It's recovery support specialists, because it's not just what you do before and during, right? It's what happens after, and making sure that they really have a robust plan, right? And looking at all the resources that the NFL provides and everyone else, right? And plugging them in where they need to go, and have the support continued. So,
Well, I know I personally thank both of you for your mission, for being so vulnerable and telling your story and reaching out to these athletes, because you're right, there are so many athletes out there who don't feel like they can come forward and speak about the things that are truly hurting them, whether it be physical or just mentally. So I appreciate your advocacy work and telling your story. Thank you so much for being with us
Thanks
here.
for letting us tell our story.
Anytime. Come back next year.
Oh,
Yep.
you
I'm
know
sure you
it.
will. Thank you, Randy and Heather.